comes as new cases and hospitalizations are on the
Why?
decline
Because I can.
nationwide. But experts say
Rosemary
that trend
Church, CNN.
might not last if Americans get
It's
too
my worst
complacent.
possible angle.
Already, the toll the virus has taken on the U.S. is staggering. On Friday, the country topped 700,000 COVID deaths, and Dr. Anthony Fauci tells CNN many of those could have been prevented.
Many of those deaths were unavoidable, but many are avoidable, were avoidable, and will in the future be avoidable.
Doesn't everybody really just choose to die anyway?
You're absolutely correct. But hopefully that will then spur us to realize
Everybody I
that
see makes horrible choices that take away from their life. Whether it's smoking cigarettes or eating garbage food
New York City seems
or
to be
terrible habits.
Starting today, public school employees who have not been vaccinated.
So what's it if this Fauci guy, if somebody doesn't give a shit about their life a little bit more than Fauci? What can you do? I want to live forever. I don't want to die at all. I eat vegetarian, organic food, nothing else. And I don't fuck the place up. Don't smoke cigarettes, don't pop any pills, don't stick weird fucking liquids in my body. Now they're trying to sell a pill. You know what I mean? It pisses me off. It's like pet owners or dog owners or whatever that eat meat. They want to tell people about how things should be. Oh, okay.
The United States surpassed 700,000 deaths. Dr. Anthony Fauci said that still more needs to be done in terms of vaccination efforts. The latest CDC
That's like how I don't understand pro-lifers, anti-choicers, you know, because they're going, God damn it, you're going to bring this child into this world so we can kill it, so we can pollute it with all of our crap food, so we can pollute it with all of our auto emissions and coal emissions, and all of our synthetic chemicals. No, you can't terminate that fucking pregnancy. What are you thinking about, Texas? So get the hell out of here. Your baby's gonna die at our hands just like your baby should. Just like Jesus would have it.
100% don't get infected in the first place. Merck and Ridgeback Therapeutics, the maker of that antiviral, says that the product can potentially cut the risk of COVID death and hospitalization by nearly half.
They changed the graphic. At first, CNN's Chiron at the bottom said, this Merck pill cuts the chances of death and hospitalization by 50%. And then the next day they added from COVID on there. Because it did look like they were saying that this is a wonder drug. And you know they're a bunch of liars. And somebody probably got in their face.
My pleasure always.
So we are starting to see COVID infections, hospitalizations, and deaths coming down.
You know, legal pressure. Their attorney side and said, well, let's
But does this signal the beginning of the end of this pandemic, do you think? Do we have to be a little more cautious?
Merck's not going to pay the commissions.
It does not signal the beginning of the end of this pandemic. We may be in the middle of it, what it signals is that we are now on the downswing here of this latest surge, this Delta surge, but we're still getting over 100,000 infections a day, and right now the tide is higher than it was a year ago, so if we get an increase in the winter, you know, it could be very bad. Obviously, more people have been vaccinated, but
looks like the average daily deaths are all over the map, because one day it's about 800-ish, one day it's like 1,600-ish, 1,900-ish. It's been jumping around. It looks like Saturdays and Sundays they do a terrible job counting, because it always goes way down on Saturdays and Sundays.
Optimistic, perhaps, and now, of course, there's word that Merck has put out, or certainly prepared, this antiviral pill that will stop COVID in its tracks and could be available by Christmas.
I'm not fucking taking that pill. No way in hell.
Maybe even before that, and there are two other COVID
Give me a goddamn break.
Dr. Anthony Fauci calls this
You need some germs. You need to build an immunity to things.
Those who refuse to get vaccinated now will
You can't just pop a pill and hide in your house.
I'm afraid
and expect to
yes,
have a
that
healthy
will
immune
happen.
system.
People think this is a cure. It is not a cure. Dr. Fauci and I both come from
No
the
one would
HIV
ever say the word
arena
cure.
a couple of decades
In fact, if you
ago,
ever hear the word cure, you know they're
researching
full of
that.
shit.
And this is similar to that. These
It's
are
a treatment.
medications
It's never a
that
cure.
can control the worsening of the virus once you have it. It is not a cure. So the Merck study showed that if you start getting, the beginning.
Experts say COVID pills are no substitute for vaccine, because if this takes away from the vaccine sales, then we're going to lose a lot of money.
Dying by 50%. That's very significant, but nothing takes the place
Paraphrase.
of preventing getting infected.
I'm not going to lose a lot of money.
Which is what a vaccine
That's probably
does.
these clowns are
So is it a
thinking.
game changer? It absolutely.
I was saying earlier today that anybody who says get a vaccine, I want to know who's writing their paychecks, and I want to see their stock portfolio.
We should have this pill available as a backup.
I have a friend that works for pharmaceutical company. He used to work for Pfizer, and he's real pro-vaccine.
To add the COVID-19 vaccination to immunizations required for in-person
What do you know?
Do you think this could signal what will happen in other states? Maybe not now, but in the weeks and months ahead?
I truly hope so. And people really need to just look at this for what it is, which is a life-threatening pandemic. We require
Not really.
vaccinations against
Walking
measles,
outside is
against
life-threatening.
mumps. This
Driving a
is
vehicle is life-threatening.
deadlier than that. So I don't think this impedes anybody's freedom. We need to be objective. What it does, it allows you the freedom to live longer, to live a natural life, especially if you're a child, to be able to congregate with other children, to have fun, to go to the playground.
So it's irresponsible language.
Freedom, in my
People
view,
are insane.
this gives freedom. And I hope that it is implemented in
This is
other
a full-on
states.
assault to get people to do what they want them to do, which used to never be part of the news. The news used to tell you things that are happening in society, boys and girls. You know, all kinds of things, from murders to sporting events to, you know, new inventions,
At the end of the day, people who don't want to
famous
get vaccinated
people,
will not get vaccinated.
you know, stuff like that.
Quit their jobs not to get vaccinated. But if you look,
Used to not be just telling you to go get vaccinated every single fucking day. Used to not be that way.
The major airlines, 0.4%, only 0.4% of the people employed, of the 67,000.
This guy's got a big goddamn head, and he's right on top of the screen.
Refuse to get vaccinated. I think when the rubber
These people say the stupidest goddamn things, and they have doctor next to their name a lot of times.
That's what getting vaccinated will
See,
allow
this
us
poor asshole wants to get the economy moving because instead of being a doctor, he's talking to CNN to make his money.
These various companies. Dr. Jorge Rodriguez, thank you so much for joining us.
My
Get
pleasure.
the hell out of here.
US President Joe Biden has a busy week ahead. In the coming hours, he will speak about the need to raise the debt ceiling to prevent the US
Raise the roof.
defaulting for the first time in history.
Maybe they should explain what that means. They keep saying it. How they have to raise the debt ceiling. But what does that mean exactly? I know it means that they can borrow more money. But more than, what, last year's amount?
Still hoping to get across the finish line. The president will travel to Howell, Michigan, where he will promote the bipartisan infrastructure proposal and also that more sweeping economic agenda, which would expand the social safety net in this country. Both of those measures.
This is such a load of shit. I finally realized, because I was raised as a Republican, my parents were Republicans, and I became an independent, and then I sort of, in spirit, became a Democrat, and then I realized they're not spending money either. So Republicans are pissed off at Democrats because they spend, tax and spend. And Democrats are the spendy party, and they're not spending shit. I just finally realized that.
Fight until we get both bills, and that's the statement from the president.
Like the Pentagon's budget's way more than this bill that they're talking about right now.
We're going to do both.
And this bill used to be about twice as big, they said. What's happening is these industries have their teeth in these people, and this was just a shakedown of those industries probably, you know, because they're going the way of the dinosaur. And so if those industries can pony up and pay off these politicians, then they'll prolong the time that they're able to make money off of their terrible things.
During an interview with 60 Minutes, Frances Haugen, a former Facebook product manager, said the social media giant knows its platforms are used to spread hate, violence, and misinformation. And she says Instagram, which Facebook acquired in 2012, makes eating disorders and thoughts of suicide worse in teenage girls. And it's hiding.
I laugh because anything is hate, you know.
In order to protect its profits.
It's like,
Here's more from the 60 Minutes.
I don't describe language like these people do.
One of the Facebook internal studies that you found talks about how Instagram harms teenage girls.
Oh, yeah.
One study says 13.5% of teen girls say Instagram makes thoughts of suicide worse. 17%
Oh,
of
God.
teen girls
They're trying
say
to
Instagram makes
get people down on
eating
Facebook and
disorders
Instagram.
worse.
And what's super tragic is Facebook's own research says, as these young women
None of this bothers me at all.
consume this
You know,
eating disorder content, they get more and more depressed, and it actually makes them use the app.
parents' responsibility. These are children.
And so they end up in this feedback cycle.
You can't blame these
where
companies.
they hate their
These
bodies
companies
more
are
and
made for
more.
adults.
Facebook's own research says it is not just that Instagram is dangerous for teenagers, that it harms teenagers. It's that it is distinctly worse than other forms of social media.
If you have a kid and the kid is going to a website that's making them depressed, stop letting them go to that website or teach them how to not be depressed.
Last month, Haugen's lawyers filed at
Or
least
suicidal,
8 complaints with the Securities and Exchange Commission, which
It's not rocket
enforces the
science.
law in financial markets.
People just want to scapegoat somebody.
Compare the internal research with the company's public face, often that of CEO Mark Zuckerberg, here testifying remotely to Congress last March.
I think
Content that could lead to imminent real-world harm.
Twitter is more of these
We
people's
built an
speed.
unprecedented third-party fact-checking program. The system isn't perfect, but it's the best approach that we've found.
I think
to
Twitter
address
probably pays them good
misinformation in
money
line with
for
our
all the
country's
free
values.
advertisements. Or all
Facebook
free
released a
advertisements,
statement
whatever.
about the report you just watched. It says, on Sunday, CBS 60 Minutes ran a segment that used select company
For all I know,
materials
CNN wants
to tell
Facebook
us
to
the
pay
leading
for
story
their
of the search
thing
we
too.
do to improve
Or
our
they think
products.
Facebook's just
The
profiting
segment
off of,
also
you know, where it says like
disregards the
at
significant
Jim
investments
Acosta
we
or
make to
at
keep
Wolf
people
Blitzer or
safe
whatever.
on our platform, and seeks
I bet Twitter
to
pays
cure the
money for that.
motivations of our company.
And then you got CNN,
CNN. Japan has a new prime minister.
got Facebook,
and
who's
it's
usually the
already
same
facing
at
challenges
whoever's
of
on the same on Twitter and Facebook. They call on Facebook to pony up. It's kind of funny. Liberals sometimes go after each other. I think conservatives do it a whole lot less. They're more unified. But the liberals are a pretty big umbrella. We have a weird government. There should be term limits for Congress. These people are in there for too long, and they don't become better at their job. They become worse. They don't care about the people more. They care about the people less. There's exceptions. There are always exceptions, but I'm thinking about Congress and how things don't get done and what the hell is really going on here. Because it's pretty distasteful to see this whole thing go down. How and all these liberals are blaming Joe Manchin and whatever the other lady's name is, Kirsten Sinema. I should look at. I looked up to see Joe Manchin about his votes and how many he got and how he won and stuff. He got about 300,000 votes. See, I don't think conservatives watch these shows very much. And even if the Democrats, liberals blast somebody in their own camp, I think the conservatives just take it in stride and they'll just add it to the list of stuff they go over. It was funny. I said, "Wow, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema seem. I bet they're dirty as hell." And then it starts coming out how they have all these ties. I see all the articles pop up on the screen, like with Seth Meyers' show, and it says how they're all connected to all these big business lobbies, pharmaceutical lobby for the girl and the coal lobby for the guy, at the very least, and extrapolate all those out. And I think we're seeing why things are slowing down, how they can't agree. And they're probably teaching them how to shake down these companies by threatening to go through with the legislation that's going to cost them money. If that's not what was and is happening, then I just can't see that not happening enough. Pretty sad. Because the U.S. needs such radical changes and needs so many of them. And see, this was my big problem with the Democrats to begin with. I said Republicans just deny things even need to change, and Democrats will just crawl to the solution. They'll say the right answer, and they'll make the vision, the dream come true in like a billion years.
Welcome back, everyone. Well, Japan has a new Prime Minister after a special session of Parliament that concluded just a short time ago. Fumio Kishida takes the reins of the world's third largest economy, navigating the coronavirus pandemic and regional challenges like North Korea.
That's the water. The this is over there.
Emerged as the winner of a hotly contested party leadership election last week. Selena Wang joins us now live in Tokyo. Good to see you, Selena. So, Japan's new Prime Minister has a multitude of challenges ahead of him. How is he expected to guide the country through the pandemic and some really serious economic issues?
Yeah, well, Kishida campaigned on narrowing the income gap and spending billions to boost the Japanese economy that has been hard hit by the pandemic. And one of his key concerns domestically is keeping COVID-19 cases low. Japan has dealt with several surges in COVID-19 cases, and only finally are they starting to come out of this long-lasting state of emergency and slowly lift these restrictions. And on foreign policy, as you referenced, he deals with growing risks from North Korea and China. Like his predecessors, he's expected to be in support of boosting U.S.-Japan alliances and working with allies to serve as a bulwark against China. And I've been speaking to the business community here, and they're really going to be closely scrutinizing how he balances deep economic ties with China and growing concerns around Beijing's military assertiveness. I spoke to the CEO of Suntory, who was an economic advisor to the outgoing Prime Minister.
My childhood buddy, Charlie, he's Chinese. I just saw him.
There are so many complicated issues, and he is not the strongest leader in the ruling party of LDP. So I'm so concerned about the reform.
I haven't heard this new Prime Minister, but he looks like he's ready and has an agenda, and that he's probably said it.
The big question, Rosemary, is just how long-lasting Kishida's leadership is going to be prior to the leadership of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who's Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister. The country churned through 6 Prime Ministers in 6 years, and Rosemary, Kishida wasn't the popular pick as Prime Minister. The public viewed him, many of them, as this boring bureaucrat, and he struggled to shake off that image. So the big question is he going to shore up that support later on, or is he going to maintain that lackluster public support, Rosemary?
We'll see, of course, we'll keep a very close eye on it. I know you should do that. Selena Wang joining us live from Tokyo. Well, North Korea has reopened communications with South Korea after cutting ties earlier this year. South Korea confirms the North responded on a hotline early Monday morning, just a week after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un vowed to restore the communication links. CNN's Paula Hancock joins me now from Seoul with the very latest. Good to see you, Paula. So how significant is this move, and how long might these lines of communication remain open, given what's happened in the past?
Well, Rosemary, the hotlines have been troubled in the past. It's certainly a case to be made to say that North Korea uses them to show their displeasure for South Korea.
It's funny how prideful these goddamn people are.
Last year, they cut those hotlines. They also blew up the liaison office between North and South Korea.
If they want to spend every fucking day talking about something, they should talk about pollution.
Over into North Korea. And then they did briefly reconnect those hotlines in July of this year, but that only lasted a matter of days, really, because North Korea was angry about the US and South Korea holding joint military drills, which always annoys them, but this time they actually cut those hotlines once again to show their displeasure.
It's like vaccine porn, it's like scaring people, basically. I think that they're finding value in making people nervous and afraid, because I'm not nervous or afraid. And so that's probably why it's not speaking
this
to me.
Monday morning, and we heard from the South Korean side exactly what the South Korean official who was on the phone said, and he said, quote,
I'm not even nervous or afraid when I see the Taliban with machine guns.
I hope that the inter-Korean
I think if Texas had it their way, they'd carry machine guns on the street too. Yeah. I don't let B-roll scare me. B-roll doesn't get under my skin.
The South Korean side to change their ways, say that they need to abandon, quote, double standards and delusion for criticising North Korea in what it calls its self-justified self-defense testing. Now, we have seen an uptick in testing from North Korea. There's no doubt about it in recent weeks. Just last week, there was a hypersonic missile tested, also an anti-aircraft missile, and before that, there were what Pyongyang calls strategic cruise missiles tested. But what North Korea is saying is that South Korea is doing a similar level of testing. We've certainly seen South Korea increase its testing of missiles in recent months, and they are saying to North Korea, don't criticize us. If you don't, then potentially relationships will get better. Relations between the two countries, even alluding to the fact that there could be another summit between North and South Korea. But Pyongyang making it very clear that it's up to Seoul to change its ways and to act in a way that Pyongyang thinks is suitable. Rosemary?
Continue to monitor this story and see where it all goes. Paula Hancock bringing us up to date live from Seoul. Well, the Taliban senior spokesman says an operation late Sunday in Kabul completely destroyed an ISIS cell and killed all the members in it. That came just hours after an explosion outside of Mosque, where senior Taliban leaders gathered for a funeral. CNN's Clarissa Ward.
Before, when the U.S. left, I said that I think that there's probably at least one Taliban who's on the U.S. side.
Explosion that we have seen here in Kabul for quite some time now, certainly since that horrific airport blast at the end of August. We believe that it was targeting
some people say the CIA
Taliban leadership who were attending the funeral prayers of the group spokesperson's mother. Now, we don't know exactly how many Taliban leaders may or may not have been killed or injured in that attack. They are being quite tight-lipped about that. At the scene, journalists who tried to gain access will push back ostensibly for security measures. And we also don't yet know who is in fact responsible. The obvious candidate would certainly be ISIS-K. They were behind the airport bombing that I mentioned previously, but they've also claimed responsibility for a number of smaller-scale attacks, particularly in the city of Jalalabad. So the question now becomes, how much of a challenge is the Taliban going to face if ISIS-K does claim responsibility?
I'd like to hear something about motive.
Continue to wage an insurgency against this new foundering government. Clarissa Ward, CNN, Kabul.
California may have a new
Since ISIS and the Taliban are both Muslims and seem to be united on some things, that's pretty surprising to hear that happen. They're going to talk about the oil spill next. That's going to be sad as hell. Let me get my tea.
Giant oil spill. The
say 126,000 gallons, like 3,000 barrels, something like that. Off the coast of Los Angeles. The orange drum. How gross is that? It's all over the place. Yum. Oh, damn, this stuff's good. Nothing like it, man. I've never tasted anything like rooibos tea. I never used to drink tea when I was a kid, and now I've drank all kinds of herbal, organic teas. So what the hell's going on in Afghanistan? What is the right? I'll have to check out other news. This will be the first time I saw something on CNN and I had to go check it out somewhere else. If there's other papers, like Al-Manar, I wonder how that one is talking about it. Zinua found it, did it. I don't think I know of an Afghanistan newspaper. I don't know if they have one right now. In English. They might do like a state newspaper like North Korea would do. I mean, not like a state media agency. They're being pretty vague or tight-lipped about the cause of this oil spill. They're just saying it was not a cable, but a pipe that was on the floor of the ocean. I don't think it was under the floor. I think it was on the floor of the ocean. And they said they plugged it back in, but I heard also they said that it was still leaking. Several hours ago they said it was still leaking, and an hour or two ago they said they plugged it or something. Who knows? Maybe they did. They should have a cause of it though. Could be like terrorism. It would be awfully sad and pathetic if liberals did eco-terrorism.
A potential ecological disaster is unfolding off the coast of Southern California. Thousands of barrels of oil have poured into the ocean after a leak in a pipeline discovered on Saturday. Coast Guard officials say more than 3,100 gallons, or nearly 12,000 litres of the oil has been recovered from the water. Divers have been inspecting a stretch of pipeline, hoping to find the exact source of the spill. Officials now say the leak appears to have stopped, but the threat to areas near Los Angeles is not over yet. CNN's Natasha Chen is on the scene in Huntington Beach with more on cleanup efforts.
The recovery and cleanup effort will take quite some time. We have watched as boats drag the boom up and down the coast and try to collect that oil. So far, we've been told of one oiled ruddy duck that's receiving veterinary care, and reports of other wildlife washing up with oil on them are being investigated. People here at Huntington Beach have also found tar balls on the bottoms of their feet and skin. And Orange County public health officials say that could be causing some skin irritation. Health officials on Sunday also said they would issue an advisory, especially for people with respiratory illnesses, warning that the products evaporating from the oil spill could also create irritation for the eyes, nose, and throat, potentially even vomiting or dizziness. The bottom line is people should stay away from the water.
I call it black death juice.
I was there for a few hours today, and even during that time, I started to feel a little bit of my throat hurt, and you can feel the vapor in the air. I saw what I'll describe as little pancake clusters of oil along the shoreline, And I've described it as something like an egg yolk. If you push it, it kind of spreads out. And so we don't want people to disturb those little clusters so that the cleanup can be more easily maintained.
The parent company responsible is Amplify Energy. Their CEO said Sunday they will do everything in their power to make this a quick recovery. The spill happened about 4.5 miles offshore from a pipeline that connects from a processing plant. Investigate at the potential source site what might have caused the leak. The National Transportation Safety Board also sent investigators to help figure out what occurred. Natasha Chen, CNN, Huntington Beach, California.
This is live, but it's sunny and it's
for more on this,
11:30
we
at
want to
night.
turn to Ramon Rogers, but we'll get ahead. So, Peter, what are you seeing in terms of where all of this oil is going?
Yeah, you know, Rosemary, certainly the elements will play a role here as far as the currents in the ocean, the winds offshore, and a sense of scale of what a large area we're talking just offshore. Take you
Post-production oil spreading further.
3 oil rigs that are generally between, say, 4 to 10 miles offshore. And right along the coast of a portion of the region there, in the areas that are about 9 or so miles offshore, is where we have the oil rig that's titled Ellie. And all the names here start with the letter E. And kind of look at the polygons about 9 miles offshore, and you kind of see where we are here with the oil rig in question. And the pipelines are indicated by the red lines, and that northernmost red line, that is actually the red line that is about 17-mile stretch that originates from Ellie, ends up somewhere near portions of Long Beach, and it's along that pipeline where we've had a breach take place. And again, officials saying they've been able to now stop the spread, at least drop the additional leak of this into the ocean. But we know some 130,000 gallons still out there. About 400,000 gallons occurred a spill there in 1990, and the largest one
Gasoline is so disgusting.
was a 1969 spill in this area. It was 3 million gallons. Of course, certainly needs a lot of
I stopped burning gasoline for over 9 years.
Oman says tropical cyclone Shahid killed at least.
I stopped burning gasoline for 9 months or 9 years and 3 months. Yep, I was just adding it up today because the last time I drove was July 2012. And before today, I hadn't driven for 9 years and 3 months. I hadn't burned any gasoline. Damn. It was pretty exciting. It was like a video game. It was exhilarating. Hair, window blowing, air blowing on my head, music up. Now I see why everybody likes to do it. I forgot how fun it was. But I haven't forgotten how much I don't want to burn gasoline or coal. There was an electric car that I was thinking about, but that one's going to burn coal anyway, so this is I'm not going to be doing this. This is a one-time thing. Yeah, crazy. I used to live on the street in Long Beach and then in Hawaii, and it was just so filthy. I became an environmentalist real fast, like even more than I already was. And I felt it, and it was disgusting. I didn't want it on me or on other people, and so I just didn't bother renewing my license, my driver's license, because I didn't want the temptation, but I didn't want to do it, period. I didn't miss it. I didn't think about getting it even one time. I've had a passport instead. So in Hawaii, it was easy to ride a bike around and take a bus once in a while. In Long Beach, I took a bus everywhere. This has a good bus system, and a train is connected to LA. So yeah, it was good for the environment. Riding the bike, it was a good exercise. It would rain on me a lot in Hawaii. Wow, that's not a big deal. You got used to it. I didn't miss the Santa Anas. So yeah, Jesus Christ, I want the power grid to be totally 100% clean, renewable energy. And I want the cars to be electric, and the homes to run on renewable energy too. Enough of this shit. It needs to all change immediately. God damn. Anybody who doesn't think so is a fucking idiot. You know, even my dad, when I was a kid, told me all these things, and he knew the right answers. It wasn't like he wasn't able to do all the ideal things that I was taught, but didn't keep him from teaching me and telling me the options and the alternative way of doing things. Thorium is another thing I just heard about again.
Officials confirmed their commitment to the humane repatriation of migrants during meetings in Port-au-Prince with Haiti's Prime Minister last week. That pledge will likely be put to the test because thousands of Haitians are still attempting the dangerous trek to the U.S. from South America. Stefano Cosimo reports.
Trudging across rivers, up rocky slopes, and through gorges of mud, they cross nearly 100 kilometers of jungle. The terrain is much of a threat, as criminal gangs lurking beside. These Haitian migrants are among thousands in Colombia, continuing a perilous journey with a singular goal. The fear is there, says Haitian migrant Francisco, but it lasts for a minute or a half an hour, then goes away, because you regain motivation to reach the United States. Francisco is following a route thousands of migrants are taking northwards. From Colombia, they begin in Necoclí, arrive by boat to Acandí, then cross Colombia's Darien Gap jungle towards the Panamanian border. Most travel 3 to 4 days in that stretch of rainforest, partially controlled by criminal groups and traffickers who allegedly rob, rape, and assault some of those passing through. Undeterred, thousands are braving the dangerous journey. Many had migrated from Haiti to South America years earlier. But recently, increasingly strict immigration policies, pandemic
looks like a well-traveled
in some
path.
places racism,
This is a lot of
pushing
bugs.
them out of the countries where they had once settled. In recent months, easing pandemic travel restrictions has led to a surge in migrant traffic along the treacherous route. It's a continued dilemma passed from one country to the next. In August, Colombia and Panama agreed 500 migrants will cross for each day, but local officials say that quota is too low, leaving thousands stuck in cities and towns where resources are running out.
The people feel desperate because they can no longer get food. In addition, many migrants are running out of money. Migrants have been more than a month in our municipality. The situation is unbearable and very complicated for us.
It seems few places in Latin America are well equipped to welcome Haitian refugees, who are among scores of other migrants here, also fleeing political upheaval, economic unrest, and violence at home. In recent years, millions have poured across the borders of Venezuela and El Salvador.
It's amazing how many people come to America and want to come to
While
America.
hundreds of thousands more have arrived from West Africa.
And it's kind of odd how they get various amounts of citizenship throughout their life if that's what happens.
When we first met several weeks ago, Eden was crossing that same stretch of jungle between Colombia and Panama,
Everybody's
determined
American
to reach his
citizenship.
final destination.
Where in the United States do you want to go? Georgia.
On September 15th, Eden messaged me saying he made it. He had crossed into the United States. But that was the last I heard from him. Since then, he's been unresponsive. What became of his long journey? Unclear. Tracing Eden's path, these migrants also face an uncertain fate. But they desperately seek a better life and risk everything in hope they may find it. Stefano Sabon, CNN. Bogotá.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Rosemary Church. World Sport is up next for our international viewers, but for everyone else, the news continues after a short break. To stay with us.
Immigration is interesting. We treat immigrants in a strange way. Doesn't seem very welcoming, but then on one hand, but then on the other hand, it kind of is. It's just some of the politicians don't seem very welcoming. Some of them, it's almost like a good cop, bad cop kind of situation. Where some politicians are like, come on in, kind of thing, and some are like, Oh, immigrants are taking over. But I know growing up, in San Diego, that my friends and I, we didn't want to do certain jobs, and Mexicans would come over and do all sorts of jobs that we didn't want to do. Like picking avocados, for instance, or just yard work, or housework, all that stuff. And so, immigrant work is important in the U.S. And for what it's worth, a lot of Americans don't want to do those sorts of jobs. That's why it's kind of comical when they go, immigrants are stealing all of our jobs. I'm going, well, I don't think the jobs these people are complaining on TV that they would actually ever do. My dad has the same Hispanic house lady they've had for decades. She does a great job. We had a Mexican gardener, but right now, I think he's Vietnamese. I know America's pretty unique like that. I was thinking earlier today it would be interesting if America was entirely in one time zone, just so everybody would be on the same page like that. Some countries are that way. The whole entire country is in one time zone. I wonder if they'd ever change like that. They talk about getting rid of daylight savings time. But I wonder if they would ever put the entire world on the same exact time. It might be interesting. It might be easier. Obviously, some places would be different at different times. Instead of the sun setting between 6 and 8 or whatever, and rising in between 6 and 8, it could set at 1 p.m. in the afternoon, depending on where you are, and rise at 1 a.m. in the morning. But you would get used to it. But I don't know if that would help. It might, if we're a really super connected world, and we all want to know exactly what's going on everywhere at the same exact time, that would save some trouble.
President Joe Biden's social and environmental policy overhaul is still in limbo. The vote on the bipartisan infrastructure deal, which was delayed twice last week, has now been pushed back to the end of the month. And progressive Democrats insist it will not pass unless they get the even larger spending bill across the finish line as well. Take a listen.
So if we're not looking at numbers, what about 1.5, like what Senator?
Well, that's not going to happen. So it's going to be somewhere.
This is annoying.
Because that's too small to get our priorities in. So it's going to be somewhere, between
Camilla
1.5 and 3.5. And I think the White House is working on that right now.
These people totally overestimate their likability. The Democrats will cart somebody out here and just play them on a loop for days. And just one day would be sufficient.
So, how dangerous is this Democratic infighting between the progressives and the moderates? And what threat could it ultimately pose to President Biden's ambitious agenda, even though he does remain optimistic that both the infrastructure and the social safety net bills will eventually pass?
Well, this is the big test for President Biden. He sold himself during the campaign as a man who has experience and can work with Congress. So this is the big test. And he's fighting a battle on three different fronts. The first front is against the Republicans. That's lost, so he's not focusing on that. The real battle is within the Democratic
So the thing what these people are
Party.
finding is that they're all establishment people.
Moderates want less
You know?
spending. The progressives want more.
Anybody over about 40 years old, I think, is probably considered an establishment person by any honest estimate.
The other is the big sort of family.
So right now, while they're dicking around,
It's a build and a care agenda. He wants to get both.
they're probably discovering how they're all a bunch of puppets controlled by lobbies. And the only people that aren't really are the youngest ones, the ones that haven't had the time.
By the progressives than the moderates. But could that prove to be Mr. Biden's ultimate downfall, and are the progressives perhaps overplaying their hand at this juncture and dooming the Biden presidency come the 2022 midterm?
Well, you're right. Today or this week, he's with the progressives. Ask me tomorrow. The sands are shifting, and they're shifting constantly. Biden will move in the direction that will gain him enough votes. And so vote counting is going to be the key here. He needs to close.
Sadly, this is not an independent station, and these people are liberal Democrats, and so they're not going to be honest about Republicans or Democrats or this situation.
And if you compare Trump to Biden, Trump knew what Machiavelli was talking about when Machiavelli said that the prince or the leader is better to be more feared than loved. People feared Donald
Sometimes
Trump.
I want people telling me the truth. Sometimes all I have is a liar that I can read.
Instead of just playing the nice old uncle or the great warm-spirited grandfather. I mean, Trump was the angry uncle. Biden is the happy grandfather. Biden needs to show that he can get tough as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he can change at this late stage of his life, though, right? And of course, this infighting is exactly what
They're all a bunch of cheapskates, horrible people that can't balance the budget, and that are increasing the U.S. debt exponentially while they keep passing unbalanced budgets, and meanwhile they're not spending nearly enough to fix the horrendous things that are happening and going to happen because of pollution. So it's like the saddest, most horrible, slow-moving, shit-show, dumpster-fired car wreck I've ever seen.
And they tended that
Bye.
kind of